Hi, everybody. It's Sarah, your host of Unmuzzled, a podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. As you know, this is about animals, the podcast. Not all of the animals have paws. They may have something else. We actually did a manatee podcast a few weeks ago. So this is a guest that I've been waiting for a bit, but unfortunately one of her personal pigeons got sick. So I gave her some time, but I really pressed her because I really want people to appreciate these magnificent, amazing birds. And I think a lot of us think of them as, city birds making a mess, causing commotion. And I want people to kind of look past that. So I'm going to introduce Natalie in a minute. But first of all, thank you to the sponsors.
Thank you so much to our presenting sponsors. Canine Cruise is the place to take your pet. They offer dog and cat boarding, dog daycare, pet retail, and mindful day school. With over 12,000 square feet of indoor space and a spacious yard, they're the one-stop shop for professional pet care in Chicago. Bark Pouch makes mess-free, lickable treats for a delightful time with your dogs. Reward good greetings, treat calm table manners, or enjoy a walk together with their easy-to-use pouch. With 5 irresistible all-human-grade recipes in 2 sizes, even picky pups find a favorite. One gentle squeeze and a quick lick of Bark Pouch treats, and you'll enjoy amazing attention, even when you're wearing gloves. Hopefully we're out of winter soon, though. Kiki's Corner Natural Pet Foods in downtown Winfield, just a block south of CDH Hospital on the railroad tracks. Kiki's has all your food and health aid needs for dogs and cats. Kiki's Corner for a healthy, happy pet.
Thank you, sponsors. I really appreciate it. I'm going to bring in Natalie. Natalie, I see Paul, his name is, right? I see him back there.
There he is.
He's beautiful. He's so beautiful. So, Natalie, you were with Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue. It was before, I believe it was called Chicago Pigeon Rescue, but you really have reached so many people and had so many states kind of participating that you made it Great Lakes, and now it's become really pretty big.
Yeah. It was, I think, in 2018 that the rescue was officially founded as Chicago Pigeon Pets. And it was a spin-off of the local rescue team. So, in all areas in the United States are going to have, and all over the world will have different kinds of wildlife rescues. And Chicago is no exception to that, and has, wild and bird life rescue for everything, but especially in the city. Chicago is in a migratory path, so there is a lot of bird traffic all times of year, but especially in the spring and the fall with all those migratory birds. And the folks who were on the pigeon rescue, who formed the pigeon rescue team, were initially part of that general bird rescue. And while they're rescuing the migratory birds and the native wild birds, there are also pigeons out there too. And again, because Chicago is a big metropolitan area, a lot of pigeon population, and they're, kind of competing resources. Like, all right, there's all these native birds, and then there are all these pigeons, and how do we handle them? So the rescue was formed because of that need to really treat these birds differently than you treat like a wild or a migratory bird who's coming into the area. And I can talk all about that if you want to get into what the difference is between a city pigeon and all the other birds that exist out there.
Yes, I would love to do that. So I've already learned a lot, which I knew I would. Just the pattern and the path that they take and the times of the year where you're really busy. But before we get to that, like, how do you get involved in this? Like, you don't grow up. I mean, some of your fosters probably do have kids, but you don't grow up, with a pigeon in your household normally. Obviously, some of your fosters and adopters do. But how did you personally get involved in this?
Yeah, I have been a bird person my entire life. Ever since I was a little kid, I was, love pet birds, love wild birds. But then, of course, you become an adult and you go off to college and you go to work, and all those things sort of fall by the wayside. But during the pandemic, I started spending a lot of time outside of my yard in the city because, work was slow for a little bit in those first couple months and everyone's freaking out. We're all in lockdown and you're not really supposed to go anywhere. And I was hanging out in the backyard with my chickens after work when I wasn't commuting. And I started seeing, a pigeon or two come into the yard. And they're always around in the city, but they were never coming into my yard. And I got kind of excited. I was like, oh, what a cute bird. And throwing seeds out to them. And they were eating some of the chicken food. And it was this cute little ecosystem happening. And then, more and more figure out that there's an endless supply of food in your yard because I was giving it to them. And as I had more come into the yard who were living in like the local church steeple or wherever they were, the injured ones would come too. And so all of a sudden it would be, hey, this one doesn't look so good, or this one's acting kind of funny, and they're sick and they need to go somewhere. And I was participating in a chicken rescue first, and there was some overlap in the chicken and the pigeon rescue community. And so I started, passing these sick and injured pigeons over to the pigeon rescue. And then after a couple years, I started saying like, hey, I don't have cats in my house anymore. So I'm open to taking care of birds inside. And that sort of opened the floodgate to learning how to rehabilitate these animals out of my apartment.
Which, so she lives in Chicago. I just want everybody to know that she's not like in the burbs with like some big like pigeon house or like, so like this is doable. Like you can foster or adopt a pigeon really wherever you live. So I'm really speaking because I don't have experience and I don't have knowledge minus the research that I did for this podcast. But like, what do they need? Because I know that you have other places that have aviaries where there's more pigeons there, and they have, shelter and like people that take care of them. But like you living in the city, I assume in an apartment or a house, like how like what do you need to foster or adopt one?
Yeah, we like to say that they're kind of like house cats. Like they really don't need a whole bunch of stuff. They're not like parrots who need to solve puzzles all day long or whatever. They need socialization. They're flock animals, but there are a lot of different options. Like they can live in aviaries outside or attached to your house, which are more traditional ways of thinking about raising birds, especially pigeons and doves. But they also make great house pets because they're pretty compact. They are, depending on their energy level, some are higher energy than others and need more interaction and whatnot. But like again, they're like house cats. Pigeons they're not spending their day frantically bouncing off the walls, Paul accepted because he's special, but they like to sit in a sunbeam and snooze and then go down and get something to eat. And they spend a lot of their time walking around. Like people make this joke, like, why are the pigeons in the city just like walking? They're foraging birds. Like flying's a lot of energy. They're kind of lazy sometimes. So, they'll fly around to get their energy out and then they'll bask in the sun sitting on the ledges of buildings. So same thing in your house. So they really just need a spot that they can call their own. They like having their home turf, like their bedroom, and that can be any kind of crate similar to, we recommend dog crates a lot, or those pop-up playpen tents work great as well. Just a good spot for them to stretch their wings, have their food and water, have a sense of safety and ownership over their space. And then, the rest of the time, if they can be out hanging out with you on the couch or sitting on a shelf somewhere or wandering around, that's good too. They really are not very high maintenance animals at all.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna ask you, like, do your friends think you're crazy, like when they come over? And
they know that this is who I am, and I obviously, have more here than normal people would, just because of the triage aspect of taking some in that need to get care and go someplace else. So there's like a rotating cast of characters, and then there are the ones who are being either here permanently or fostered, and that's true for a lot of different people. Like some will foster a couple birds at a time, and some will have a triage station of lots of different birds. But I mean, it depends on how you want to get involved with with rescue. But if you just want to be a normal person with with pets, you know, a couple's great. You know, that one can work if you're going to stay home and socialize with them a lot of the time, and they're going to be a, you know, a member of your family. But two is no harder than one, and they mate for life. They make lovely little couples, and it's so cute to watch them just canoodle and take care of each other and build their nest and all that. So, you know, if you're not going to be home all day, getting two so they can kind of keep each other company and then spend time with you when you are home is also great. And it again, they're so precious to watch.
And once you have two, you might as well have five. I mean, let's be real
I
here.
say it's just like having a flock. It's one flock of birds. Not worry about how many are in the flock.
Oh, well, that's incredible work you do. So I just want to get back to kind of, and we'll talk a little bit about the differences, but the goal of what is a 501c3, a pigeon rescue, is not just, you know, to get them adopted and fostered, but like you said, the medical, what we're doing here, which is education, like understanding, okay, what do I do when I find a pigeon that is injured? So actually I do want to go, we might as well go into that now, because I think a lot of us see like on, you know, frantic, like social media posts, like, hey, I just found this fox, you know, hey, my dog bit this rabbit, where do I go? Everybody's like Flint Creek, and, you know, Flint Creek is backed up, but like, what should people do when they find a pigeon? And I'm not just saying like call you, like that's not
yeah, right.
this. Like there's steps that you should take, right, when you find an injured pigeon. So can you kind of go through that first?
Yeah. So first of all, the thing we tell everybody is please secure the bird however you can. And this can mean a t-shirt, a paper grocery bag, a cardboard box. Like I tell people, hey, if you're downtown and you don't have anything with you, go into the garbage, go into an alley, go into a restaurant, get a paper takeout bag. I've had birds brought to me in every fast food branded bag you can name. Like my favorite was when you get like little Chipotle bag with a little pigeon in it. I've done this myself where I don't have a box, so I go into an alley and open up the recycling bin and get a cardboard box out. Getting them out of harm's way is the first thing to do. It's so heartbreaking when someone calls in a bird and they're like, "Oh, I saw them over here," and then it's like they're not there anymore. They left or they didn't know what to do, and by the time we can find another person to go out there, the bird has either disappeared into thin air, or the worst is when a predator comes. And so if these birds are already compromised, they are a sitting duck for cats, hawks, dogs, traffic, anything like that. And so it's just get the bird safe and then ask questions later. Sort of my MO, like secure the animal and then figure out where they can go. One thing we get asked a lot is, hey, I don't want to touch this bird. You know, like what, you know, and some people are afraid of birds, and I totally respect that. And that's something that's a little more difficult to coach people through, because it can be a phobia, and that's very real. But the other thing is, like, they're not going to hurt you. Like, they have very soft beaks. They're not like a raptor. They don't have claws that are going to like scratch. Their defense mechanisms are for other birds, not for people. So they are not predators. Are not going to harm you in any way. They may flap, which could scare folks, but you're not going to get injured touching a pigeon. And the other one is disease. And this is something we're all taught as kids, to respect wildlife and not touch them, which is great. Like, you shouldn't normally just be touching wildlife, but touching a bird is not going to mess them up. You're not going to get a disease from touching a pigeon. Just practice common hygiene. Wash your hands afterwards. That's great. But it's okay to touch them with your bare hands. So that's the first thing to do, is just get this animal into safety and keep yourself safe while doing it, and then find the right people to contact.
Really interesting, because I mean, honestly, I'd be most nervous about the beak first. So knowing that is like probably the least of your worries is helpful, I think.
Yeah, they're seed eaters, they're granivores, and they don't even crack the seeds open like a parrot does or a finch. They just swallow them whole. So they can, when they're feisty and they're tame and they are playing with you, they will bite you gently, but they're not going to, you know, it's not going to be the same thing as like if a horse is going to bite you or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was I just going to ask him there? Oh, so yeah, can you kind of, so I was looking at your pet finder, and like I would never ever go to pet finder and search pigeon, but like, there was a link on your website. You have a lot of birds actually for adoption. But can you describe, because there are different types, you also take in doves, I saw. But can you kind of describe, I think we all think of like New York or like, even the middle of Chicago, and all of them like flocking towards food or being around maybe like a lower income neighborhood where there's just a lot of them. And I think it's really interesting what you said at the beginning about them kind of starting to come into your yard as well, because I was just thinking about that. You really don't see them in your yard. You see them more outside on the streets and such. So outside, not that my yard's inside, but you know what I mean? So can you kind of describe the different types? Because they're all, like, I was just looking at Pet Finder, and they're all absolutely gorgeous, and they're all really unique birds.
Yeah. So that's a great segue into the fact that pigeons and doves are all at a species level the same. Like there's no difference at like a biological level between those types of animals. It's all kind of in appearances. So you think about it like canines, you've got poodles and you've got Rottweilers, and you trace them all the way back and they're from the same spot. That's true with all the pigeons and the doves that we have today. So when you get into the differences between them, you get into the sizes and then the traits, just like dogs, that are bred into them for different reasons. The ones that you see in the city are what are referred to as rock doves, and they are pigeons that came over hundreds of years ago as food and fertilizer sources when the continent was settled, and they just kind of got out into the open because obviously they're more mobile than something like a chicken. So they're going to get loose and they're going to start procreating and taking up residence where they can. But they were all birds that were brought here and bred and raised by humans. So we refer to them as feral birds because they are not truly native wild birds. They have no concept of, oh, this is my natural habitat and I'm going to survive here just fine. The reason you see them around cities is because they are used to living back in historic times when they were being raised in mass in giant aviaries and lofts and things like that. They're rock cliff dwelling animals, so they're not going to nest in trees and your little stereotypical like robin cartoon nest with sticks and mud and stuff like that. They're just going to have they use sticks and twigs and things, but they nest on ledges. So when you think about it, ledges in the city are everywhere. They're in our underpasses, they're in our alcoves on buildings, and so they came over into densely populated areas. They don't forage well because there isn't natural food source here in America. There are very few times a year where there are grains readily available growing off of plants in the city. So that's why you see them eating garbage all the time, because they were used to being fed by humans, and so they're just used to coexisting with humans. So all those birds live in areas of high population density for two reasons. One is because they are, ancestrally used to humans taking care of them, and also they're, from a habitat perspective, there's lots of good places for them to take up residence. So that's the rock pigeon. I can talk all about the other types now too.
Yeah, no, so that's really, really interesting about not being able to find food, and that's why you see them. Oh, there he is. So can you tell, since he's there, and that was going to be my next question. So please, for more information about, if you want to find out more about the pigeons that she was just talking about, go to their website, which you see there, Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue.org. If you're listening to the podcast, it's also in the description. But tell us the story of Paul, because I wanted you to kind of tell your favorite story, but since he's sitting there, like, I would love to hear the story of him.
Yeah, so Paul is an interesting one. He actually came from some adopters who had originally adopted some pigeons from Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue. At some point that there was, the story that I was told, what there was a group of pigeons somewhere in their area being used for, I think, like target practice. Now that can mean a lot of different things, either like skeet shooting or dogs, like hunting training, crap like that, which, ooh, I can't even imagine. And I guess that they went to go, find these birds and liberate them. And the story has it that they found Paul. I'm not sure how old he was when they got him, but they had to surrender Paul and their 2 original rescue pigeons due to health issues. So he came into the rescue last fall, I believe, and he was actually adopted out and returned twice. And I said after the second time, like, just send him to me if he's going to go through this, because I felt so bad for him being bounced back and forth between homes because he's so human friendly. So that's Paul.
So, okay, so that's my other question, I think. And I think this would be what people want to know is like, how do you like domesticate them if they do come from, the street or a yard or say fine? Like, how do you just take your time? How does that work?
Yeah, they're already very human-oriented animals. Like because they have been raised with humans for so long. Like other domestic species, you'll find this in chickens and sheep, and I think cows and probably others that I'm forgetting. They recognize humans, and there have been a lot of different scientific studies done by this. So when you hear about, people going out to the park and all the pigeons flock to them, that's because that pigeon knows that that person's been feeding them. I heard a story once of somebody who he was like, would drive his truck, down the interstate and pull over on a ramp to a parking lot to feed birds. And these pigeons would sit on like billboards and they would see his car. And as soon as they saw it from however many miles away or whatever, they would start flying along and meet him at the parking lot where he was going to drop the food off. And I had that happen to me at my old apartment, where one of the pigeons that I was befriending during the pandemic, she saw me walking down the street and I saw her fly into the yard, and she was there waiting for me when I opened up the back gate. So like they know people, like naturally, they do. And so that leap between taking one off the street into your home at any age, they're going to get used to at some point. Now they're all different. They all have different histories and personalities, just like any animal. So the trajectory is not going to be the same for everyone, but on a long enough timeline, like they will see you as your flock.
Yeah, and I noticed too on Facebook and so some pictures on your website, they wear like little, what are they wearing?
Oh, so these are pigeon pants, as they're colloquially called. The ones that Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue uses almost exclusively are called flypers, like flying diapers, by Bev's Bird Boutique. She makes them for all types of birds, and she's located in, I believe, South Africa, but she's got them, like different configurations and different sizes for, parrots to tiny birds. But they're super popular with pigeons, and they're awesome because strap those guys on and let them fly around, and then all the poop is nicely contained and not all over your furniture. So I have Mirando here. He is wearing the dinosaur flyper.
Oh.
Now Mirando's a special guy, and we can talk about him.
Oh my God, I love him. Is he adoptable?
This was my second foster fail. So Mirando is, I think the type of pigeon we haven't talked about yet are racing pigeons. And again, they have the same, DNA ancestry as any pigeon you might see, but these are the ones who have been bred and raised to fly long distances in races. And this is where you start getting into oh, well, the pigeon is in your house and don't they want to be flying free? And again, pigeons love flying. They're really great at it. They're good at it for finding food and evading predators. They're not migratory birds. They're not flying hundreds of miles every year to go someplace. They're homebodies. They have a strong sense of home. And that's what pigeon racing capitalizes on. These are beefcake birds who are bred to be very strong athletes, but they're bred to go from point A to point B very quickly. They're domestic animals who, during that route from point A to point B of a couple hundred miles, depending on the type of race, they're not stopping for food and figuring out how to live and be a pigeon. They're just trying to get back home. And what's really sad about this is, again, because pigeons have a strong sense of home, they're not just wandering all over the country for fun multiple times a year. The racing capitalizes on that and says, okay, well, I want this pigeon to go back to my loft as fast as possible so I can win money, right? It's a gamble. It's like horse racing, but different. And the draw for this pigeon is to get back to his family. So what they'll do is they'll put these birds together with their spouse. Again, they mate for life. And then the day before the race, they'll separate them and then put them back together real quick before the race happens. So that bird is having this longing for their partner. And then they drive them a couple hundred miles away and release them. And of course, that bird's going to fly as fast as they can back home to get back to their spouse. Like, that's what they're doing. They're not doing it because they want to go super fast to get a trophy, and that's what they're made for. They've been trained to do this, and they've been manipulated to get back there because they want to be home. And part of what we do is we find these wayward birds. They get sick, they get exhausted, they get lost, they get hungry, they get attacked, they get hit by a car, and they're found, and the racers don't want them back. It's very much, hey, call, we found your bird. They don't answer, keep it. It's terrible. And Mirando is one of these such birds. He was found in, I think it was 2022 in July. Very young, couple months old, hungry, skinny, just sitting out front of a school. No one wanted him back. And he was doing all right for a couple months at the rescue, and then developed this neurological issue referred to as torticollis, where the head control is compromised. And he needed supportive feeding and medication for a bit because he was, dealing with this. And he never recovered from it, but he gets on just fine. Like, you would be surprised. He can eat and drink and see how beautiful his feathers is. He grooms himself, takes baths. He socializes quite well. Like, when he's focused on something, he's running across the apartment just like anybody else. He can't fly, obviously, and he's kind of, stuck with his beak up in the air a lot of the time, but he's really sweet. And it's like, this is one of those birds who just wouldn't have stood a chance being out in the wild.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, my jaw was like on the floor for that whole thing. It's just like that's mortifying. Number one, to like separate them like that. Like I was like almost in tears. So is that happening like in Chicagoland or like Illinois area?
That's funny because technically pigeon racing is illegal in the city of Chicago, but of course there's nobody patrolling the airspace for pigeons. And these lofts exist all over the country. So, technically, are they out in the suburbs and in Indiana? And are these birds flying through the Chicago area? Yes. It's also a very big deal in the city of New York. People have lofts on top of buildings out there. So this is something that happens all over the world, all over the country. And they end up in Chicago because they're racing, through it.
Wow. I mean, wow. That's insane. I mean, I've never heard anything like that. It's just wow. That poor guy. So I just have one question. I want to get to how people can help you. He's fine not to fly. Like basically he can just walk anywhere he wants to go.
Yeah, absolutely. He has a one of those pop-up dog tents on the floor, so that's his house. And I have it on the floor so that he can get into and out of it on his own. So I can just open that up and he can come and go as he pleases. And you can put a dog crate on the floor as housing for any pigeon, even ones who can fly. They're not really particular about, are they up exactly 4 feet off the ground or something like that. If they can fly, they are going to prefer to be up higher. That's just like a natural instinct for birds to be up high and sit someplace and look down on things. But yeah, he can be in the same kind of housing as anyone else could. And, a lot of our birds, like they're pretty adaptable. And if someone is interested in a bird and they see that they have special needs, like we have birds who have foot issues, or they're partially blind, or they may be like missing a wing or have a broken wing and they can't technically fly anymore. Don't be scared. Like we can help you figure out what those accommodations are for that particular bird. And 90% of the time, almost no different than a bird who can fly. Like again, for Mirando, it just wouldn't make any sense for me to put him, up on a high up cage because he can't get up there on his own. So it's just better for him to, be self-sufficient and have his house on the floor, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, incredible. So the biggest thing I want people to be able to help you. So obviously you need fosters and adopters is probably the biggest need. But you are a 501c3, so they are charities. So all of your donations are tax deductible. And I assume, Natalie, that goes to like supplies for fosters, building out aviaries. If you need certain supplies for a special needs type pigeon or dove. And then just the education portion, obviously, is huge too. I mean, my jaw was like on the ground for this whole podcast. Just remarkable work. But is there anything else that people should know? I mean, obviously, just like a reputable animal or dog rescue or cat rescue. Like if you foster, you're going to have that support of Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue as well.
Yeah, and so we ask all our fosters be within, I think it's a 60 or 100-mile drive of our main facility. So that can either be in Chicago, and I believe we've also got some people who will foster out in the DC area because we have like a satellite location out there with one of our main founders leading that. And that's just because if that bird needs veterinary care, it's an easier trip to get back to our vets that we use. But if anyone's interested in fostering, we set you up with everything. We coach you on the type of bird that would be good for your household, just as if you were adopting. Set you up with a loaner cage so you don't have to worry about picking out the right, dog crate or all of that stuff. We'll give you one of those. We'll work with your space to make sure everything fits, and then a basic starter set of some supplies, some toys or whatever. Like we'll get all that set up. And what we would love to have people do is just foster and then foster to adopt. There are so many birds who they're just like used to being in homes and should really just be around people. And it's really hard to say like, oh, let's put them in a space with a lot of birds when they would love to be, in a house situation, or they have special needs and they do need to be under closer supervision than something like an aviary.
Yeah, actually, really important point that you just made there is like they're not taking these birds from wherever they're living. Like these birds need a house, a home, an aviary. And if you go to their website, you can see where some of these birds live, and you'll see these birds are living very good lives. And like the one that you're holding there, like he's awesome. Like, and I can tell, I'm gonna cry. Like you just are doing great work.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's so sweet. And like hearing that story, it breaks my heart that people are doing that to these innocent animals who just
Well, so I described Paul, who was taken from a very strange and terrible situation, and then Mirando the same. But the birds that we have are the ferals, like I was describing before, the ones that you see in the city. So many of them will come to us with injuries where they can't be released again. Like one of my favorite stories is I have this couple, their names are Hula and Hopscotch, and they're not super friendly towards me anymore because they're married. So they have each other. They don't need me in their life. So I can't like hold them like this. But Hopscotch was found in downtown Chicago on Valentine's Day. And we think that he ran into an industrial fan because he smelled like oil. He was dirty, and one of his feet had been cut off. And then part of his wing feathers and tail feathers had also been cut off, all in like a line. And so there he was, just laying in the gutter, missing a leg. And it had already started scabbing over. And this is February. Like, he wouldn't have had a chance. And someone saw him, and one of our volunteers picked him up and brought him to me. And I, tended to his wounds and bathed him, and eventually, healed. And he has one leg, but he hops around just great, and his feathers are beautiful now. And he is happily married to Hula. And Hula was a bird who is a collision injury. She probably got hit by a car and was found just skittering around on the street, like just evading people. And she came to me, and she was all crooked, and her tail was bent, and her head was bent, and her eye was swollen. And, we nursed her back to health, and it turned out to be that she was blind in one eye. And because of that collision, she's got a neurological issue where she has a constant shake, and hence the name Hula. And neither of these birds could be released again. But if you were dealing with something like a cardinal, those are protected species. You can't have a pet cardinal in your house, or you shouldn't, right? But with pigeons, they're feral. They're not native. They're not, they fall into that gray area of, like, you can kind of do whatever you want with them, for better or for worse. And so that's why we're able to take those feral birds, and if they can't be released back into their flock, we can rehabilitate them to be indoor pets. And so that's why you'll see a lot of the birds on our website, if they look like, those traditional outdoor city pigeons, they all have a story. They're either injured in some way that would make them, not be able to return to their wild flock, or sometimes we get ones who have been raised by humans from a young age, and they're so acclimated to people that they would not do well outside on their own either.
Natalie, I think I have an amazing fundraiser idea, and that is a pigeon wedding, and then we go viral on TikTok, and we make all the money for Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue. I mean, I can see it now. It would be phenomenal.
It is so fun watching them fall in love with each other and flirt, and then just being happily married. Like, it is amazing. It is so special.
It's so cool. I love it. By the way, while you were speaking there, that's another great thing. A way that people can help is to volunteer. So I'm sure that some training goes into that. But if you are a bird lover and you want to be the person that rushes to somebody calling Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue to try to secure a bird or get the bird to foster or facility or whatever, that's another great point. So Great Lakes pigeonrescue.org for that. I was reading that on the website too. Natalie, you have been one of my favorite guests ever. I really, really appreciate your time. I'm glad that I waited you out. And please, I'm like obsessed. My husband will never ever let me have one, but like, I'm telling all my friends to get pigeons. So thank you.
We're trying to make it happen. They're amazing animals. They're so much fun. They're so unique, and there's never a dull moment with them.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for all you do. I really have a new appreciation, and I really appreciate your help.
Of course. It was great talking to you, and I so appreciate your work with getting information about all types of animals out into the world. It's so important.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you, Natalie. Take care.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
You too. What a terrific guest. I mean, I love all of my guests so much, but my mouth was like on the floor for most of that. So thank you so much, Natalie. I really, really appreciate it. Please go check out greatlakespigeonrescue.org for more information. Here again is the website. If you can take in a pigeon, please let me know. I want to hear all about it. I mean, wow. I'm pretty sure that SHIP is not going to allow that in this household, but you never know. And they have those special outfits. I forget what she called them. Outfits. Supporting sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our supporting sponsors. Give the gift of joy and memorable moments of furry loved ones with a gift card from Kimberly Kingan Photography. For more details, please visit her website at kimberlykingan.com or contact her directly at her email, kimberly@kimberlykingan.com. The Canine PT is Chicago's highest rated dog physical therapy clinic, and they're dedicated to enhancing the lives of your four-legged companions as they age or when recovering from an injury. They also offer a discount for rescue dogs. For more information, visit thecaninepT.com. That's THEK9PT.com. Anything is Plausible is Chicago's premier dog training company. They offer group classes for every stage of your dog's life and have a talented team of behavior specialists to work through any issues that need modification using positive reinforcement. Check out Anything is Plausible. Liz Starks at Guaranteed Rate. Check with Liz for the absolute best mortgage options. She helps when others can't and even calls it rescue loans. Buyers, sellers, investors, give Liz a call. She can lend in all 50 states. NMLS number 224526.
Thank you, supporting sponsors. I really appreciate it. Thank you again to Natalie from Great Lakes Pigeon Rescue. Please check them out at their website. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. I appreciate it. Have a great week.